Hello, everyone. Welcome to this first Price Labs online conference of the year. I hope the year is starting well for you. Uh, as you may, I'm Thibault. I'm the head of product marketing at Price Labs, and I happen to be French. And if you're in France, you can tell people Happy New Year until the last day of January. Seems crazy in other countries, but anyway, Happy New Year to everyone. I think it's a nice way to get started. And to start this new year of 2024, I'm very happy to report that we have three experts here who are going to help you fine-tune your revenue management strategy for this new year. Uh, you may think, well, maybe it's late, maybe it's kind of late to do this in January. The year has started. So we'll talk about that. We'll talk about, the year. We'll talk about what to look out. Should you be looking at the recent signals you got and the rest? It's a panel. We'll be discussing this with three experts. So I got like 4 slides, no more than 4 slides, just to introduce the topic, introduce myself, the speakers, and we go right at it. We'll get into the questions. So thank you for joining. There's about now 100 of you live. Thank you so much. Let me just share these slides. Again, just 4 slides just to know what to expect today. Usually I'm pretty poor at going through slides, and since that finding the right window, usually it's hiding somewhere. I never won't know where. So let me do it again. When I want to share my screen, you can see it's live clearly. All right. Presenting this. There we go. All right. Thank you again so much for being today. Most of you, I'm guessing, are Price Labs users. And we're talking today about fine-tuning your revenue management strategy. And what's great here, we have people who know the industry really, really well and who can talk both strategy and real-life actions. So obviously, most of you know Price Labs as your Price Lab customers, and thank you for that. As you know, we're pretty active in the industry, from small, especially to large property management companies. I'm Thibault. I'm the head of product marketing at Price Labs, and I also happen to be the founder of Rental Scale Up. It's a short-term rental industry news website. So, at Price Lab, we really try to give you the right insights, the best insights possible through data, as well as through news, through Rental Scale Up. That's what we do. But more interestingly, what do we have today? As I said, it's about fine-tuning the year. And for that, we'll see what you can do as in mid-January for maximum effectiveness. We'll talk about the importance of your data. We'll talk about booking windows. We'll talk about how you may be a revenue manager, or you may be a manager in your company, and you may probably want to think, what is not revenue management is not just a question that matters to revenue managers, right? It's a cross-company effort. We'll talk about that. And then we'll talk about owners, because maybe as well, 2024, you need to have some conversation with owners. Maybe you've seen recent signals that you need to have these conversations again. We'll talk about how to do that. Last slide. There we go. Who's speaking today? We have Meaghan, Kevin, and Jordan. And what I'm going to do, so Meaghan is from OutPost, Kevin from Western Trust, and Jordan from RevPARTY. But much better, I'm going to let Meaghan, Kevin, and Jordan, in this order, introduce themselves. So let me stop sharing so you can see each of them, and let's get started. Welcome, dear speakers. Meaghan, do you want to get started and introduce yourself?
Yes, I'd love to. Thank you so much for having me. Hi, I'm Meaghan Moylan. I'm the executive director of the Outpost Group, and we are located in Jackson Hole, Wyoming, which is why I live in a log cabin. It is one of the only good things about it being 1 degree outside. But I got my start in the industry about 9 years ago, working for a company called 360 Blue in the Florida Panhandle, where I started with revenue management, really in reservations, and quickly moved over to revenue management. And we managed about 650 units. And now with Outpost, we have about 250 units, all located here in Jackson. But revenue management, now that I'm overseeing all operations, it's still my first love. So I'm excited to be here.
Thanks a lot. Next,
Awesome.
Kevin.
Yep, my name is Kevin Lincicome. I started in sales, then operations with Vacasa, kind of moved to rented, where we shifted to a revenue management platform or focus, and that is really how I got into revenue management. Worked pretty extensively on Price Labs, actually, for thousands of units and probably hundreds of companies. So I became very familiar with different strategies and how to do, because every company does it a little bit differently, and we try to tailor to everyone. So I am now with Western Trust. We have maybe 11 markets, something like that. And I'm the director of hospitality, which is the operations side for the US, but then director of revenue management for the company.
Thank you, Kevin. Jordan, how about you?
Hey, how's everybody doing? I'm Jordan Locke, the founder of RevPARTY. I'm based in Austin, Texas, but I am from Michigan, so I'm having a really good week. Since we won the game, I'm in a good mood. I've started pricing really early in my career. I priced everything from toilet seats to computer chips to bananas. Got into short-term rental about 8 or 9 years ago. Since then, I've worked for large portfolios. I started the revenue management program at Verbo. And now I do RevPARTY consulting. So we can help with anything from projects to revenue management as a service.
Well, Meaghan, Kevin, Jordan, thank you so much for being here today. And just so you know, people, if you're watching this right now, of course, you will be able to ask questions in the end. By the way, there's also a comment section. And in the comment section right now, I'm just curious, can you let us know where you are right now in terms of markets? Because we are going to be talking about ski markets for some reason, but beach markets as well. Just so you know, we can tailor really, really what we're saying to where you are. For example, just let us know which markets you are in the comment section. Outer Banks, San Diego, Switzerland, Mumbai, Charlotte, Flagstaff, London. Okay, that's keep up. Please keep it giving us the locations where you are, so we can really see where you are. Again, there's more than 150. There's more than 150 of you here. Another thing I wanted to say, obviously, you've heard the speakers, they are used to, they manage very big numbers of listings. I guess most of you here also manage quite some listings. A quick poll, just let us know again also how many listings you have. Again, enables us to target thing. And something I want to say is that obviously, if you have between, let's say, 1 to 9 listings, what's important for you, listen to how people think about it, but maybe the advice you have here, how to fine tune, maybe I'm not going to say a bit too much, but be careful that don't fine tune too much the way these people do it, because maybe they do it like on a daily basis. They have dedicated people. The approach, as you know, with we have Price Labs, that if you have a smaller host, fewer properties, usually you want to let the algorithm act. If you have more properties, more experience, this is where you start customizing more and more. Just an approach. So again, because I really want each of you to have great results. All right. So 40% of you have between 1 and 9 properties, 16% 10 and 19, 12% 24 up to 50 properties basically, 13% close to 100, under 100, and more than 100 is 18% of you. Okay. And that's interesting, as of course, obviously, 18% is also people who have a lot of listings. So that's a lot of listings here. Thank you so much. All right. So now after this housekeeping, which is again important because I'm able to really customize the questions to you. Let's get started. So maybe with you, Kevin. So it's already mid-January, and here we're talking about fine-tuning 2024. And usually, property managers, have been working on this strategy, in 2023. So these are, January, February are big booking months. Is it just too late? Is there still something people can do to fine-tune their strategy in January?
Yeah, I actually think it's never too late. I think we were fine tuning our strategy of 2023 in September. So I mean, it's an ongoing process. So I would definitely say it's never ever too late. But I think what's important is that you start to look at, or for us anyway, it was, I know that booking windows are getting shorter, and if you're using kind of that time and occupancy based matrix to make adjustments, maybe have a look at them. If you're using ones that are, fairly old, you might want to tweak those a little bit and maybe not discount quite as soon as you used to be, or as far out as you used to. Hold on a little longer. But yeah, I think there's always an opportunity to fine tune. If we're talking about specifically ski markets, then you got to get fine tuning soon if you haven't already. But yeah, keep poking away at it.
You're poking away at it. Meaghan, what's your view on this?
Yeah, I agree with Kevin. I think it's never too late. I was just thinking through a couple of easy, actionable tips really quick. So, three things that kind of came to the top of my head, which Kevin mentioned this, is understanding your booking window. In a beach destination, for example, you see this massive decline in reservations toward the end of the year, and then it's like immediately New Year's Day, your phones start ringing off the hook, or you have hundreds of inquiries on the OTAs or through your direct site. So understand your booking window, and then also understand when you're booking for each season. And so I think a booking window can be arbitrary information if it's just like one booking window for one property, right? Like in January, you might be booking for spring break. And then when March hits, you might be booking for summer. So understand those. And then what I find to be really helpful is to group my properties in specific booking windows. So these are the properties that I have that are always, for the most part, going to book over 90 days out. Okay, I know that I should be making adjustments to these sooner than I should be making adjustments to my homes that typically book 15 days out, for example. And there's data available, like whether or not you use a tool, it's also available in your property management system. It's more annoying to pull and would require an Excel formula to do so. And then the second thing I would say would be to introduce revenue meetings, no matter how many listings you have. It's something that we started back in the day when I was managing a portfolio of like 200 units in the Panhandle of Florida. And the meetings were really intimidating from the very beginning. Like I was required to sit in front of the owners of the company and just explain my strategy and what I was working on. But it became so helpful because there was a level of accountability during those meetings where I had to speak to what I was doing on the revenue side. And if you have a smaller company and you're managing 10 listings, get together with your business partner and just understand like how many inquiries are coming in. Speak to both the sales and the marketing side. What kind of emails are we going to be sending out, if any? If we don't send emails out to push our direct booking percentage, what are we doing on the OTAs? Do our photos look okay? How are our descriptions looking? I think all three of the departments, sales, revenue, and marketing, make a significant impact on your bookings. So start those meetings today if you haven't already. Know your booking windows, and then occupancy-based adjustments. I would agree with you, Kevin. I think that's a easy kind of beginning strategy to make, where, for example, if you are X number of days out and the home has an occupancy of X or lower, decrease rates by X%. It's a relatively easy formula. I don't know if the way I said it made it sound super confusing, but I think that's a good place to start.
These are three great places to start, indeed. Thank you so much for sharing these actionable things to do. And Jordan, how about you? Is it just too late to keep working on 2024?
Oh, it's always too late. No, usually you can't tell if you're right, but you can tell if you're wrong. And so a lot of it is just kind of disproving different hypotheses you might have. Meaghan kind of touched on it a little bit. I think a lot of people kind of focus on compression events. They want to know like the big things that are happening that will drive revenue, but they don't really think about what I call trigger events. So when a music concert drops their lineup, when a team makes the playoffs, when Taylor Swift, right, says her tour dates, like everybody floods to book then. And so you can apply this just to smaller events too that are logical. So if you're by a university, they're probably going to book for graduation around Christmas or spring break. And so that's probably when you need to be ready by. And the only other caveat I would give, both of the others are hit on booking windows, which is extremely true and very fundamental to your success. But I would just say it does vary by market and by unit type. So I would just make sure whether you're big or small that you're staying on top of what that booking window is for that specific unit.
Yeah, not just unit type, unit size. So 6-bedroom house is going to book very differently from a 2-bedroom or a 1-bedroom condo.
I heard the word booking window. Also, you're heard like looking at last year, for example. So let's talk a minute about looking at last year. I know at Price Labs, a lot of the graphs have to do with same time last year, right? And talking with the three of you, I heard the topic, look at same time last year. So maybe I'm guessing people who have a lot of properties who are revenue managers kind of know what I mean by same time last year. But could you walk us through why same time last year is important? How I can look at that data of what happened same time last year, and why sometimes it's kind of dangerous to just look at this. Maybe Jordan, do you want to get started?
Sure. So it's really important to look at stuff same time last year, especially in vacation rentals, because it's a very binary outcome. You don't have a lot of identical units necessarily in a lot of portfolios. So the best comparable you have is how you did for the same time last year. The caveat is you kind of have to see trends and incorporate them. So if booking windows are shrinking or ADRs are being suppressed, you have to kind of keep that in mind. And then another thing is you can't really overreact on year-over-year data. So we're constantly doing comparisons year over year, month over month, property to your portfolio to market. I'm trying to get an idea of what's causing different things to happen. And so that's really where you have to look at your predictive assumptions and see really how you can start to drive it. What we do at RevPARTY is we actually create a blame box. So it's a 2x2 grid. And we mathematically calculate and attribute changes in your RevPAR to different components. So we can do it by market, by your portfolio, by ADR occupancy, and then the cross section of all of those. And that's what we kind of use to tell what to focus on.
All right. Meaghan, same question for you in terms of same time last year. How important is that?
I mean, I think when you're sitting in an operator's shoes, right, like that's what your owners have access to is last year's data. They're pulling up their statements from last year. They're calling you and saying, hey, I'm looking at spring break this year and we booked this same week for $2,000 on Christmas and we haven't booked it yet. And so you have to be able to speak to last year's data in an educated way I think it's consistently educating homeowners to understand that every single week is not going to book for what it booked for last year. And it shouldn't. That's what dynamic pricing means, right? And that's why we're moving toward this new strategy within revenue management. But that being said, like you are going to consistently get those questions. I think it's the easiest comparison that you can make to last year's data. It's easily accessible. And a lot of the times, right, like you're only shifting, if you're not in a leap year, one day ahead. So you can study week to week versus looking at 2019, for example, and what was the same Saturday last year might be 5 days prior in 2019. So it's a little difficult. We use key data and it's really easy for us to kind of toggle through previous year's data. I think we are now in a situation, which is exciting to say, it's been difficult over the last couple of years where it makes more sense to compare to last year's data than when we were in 2023 or in 2022 or in 2021. I think over the last 4 years, it's been really, really difficult for us to make any type of comparison because every year has been an anomaly after another. And with this decline that we've seen over the last 18 months, and I know that's been difficult for everybody, and there weren't any markets that were left out of that. There is an excitement now that with the normalization comes the ability to compare to prior year data. But to Jordan's point, like don't rely solely on that information. Each year is different. Easter is going to shift if that's a busy season in your market. And so understanding when those holidays or specific events that drive ADR higher are, just use a combination. Don't rely solely on prior year data would be my input.
Thank you, Meaghan. And by the way, I like that you mentioned various tools because obviously this is, we're Price Labs here. I am Price Labs, but I'm super, super, interested in hearing, how, each of you, what tools you guys use, because again, there's a variety of things we can be using. And I think Kevin, actually, you saw on the same question, right? Same time last year. Again, How is it important? How can people get this? How do you do it yourself?
I think both Megan and Jordan had fabulous answers. I agree with looking at year over year. It is the only thing that you have to go with for specific units. The thing that I would always say is make sure you're looking at same store when you're looking at your portfolio numbers. If your inventory has changed a little bit, don't go just on, oh, here's my revenue this year, here's my revenue last year. Make sure that you're looking apples to apples. But yeah, I think you always want to contextualize it. So you've got your year over year, but you have to have context. What's the market doing? So if you're down 3% or 4%, which everyone sort of is kind of prepping for this 2024 being down a little bit, ski markets may be an exception. What's the market doing? If the market's down 10 and you're down 3, you're doing a good job. You know what I mean? So always have context to it. A couple of that, I love the Megan went with the actionable item kind of things. Is one of the things that I like, especially when you have properties that have big revenue swings for certain events, New Year's, MLK, President's Day, like ski markets, July 4th, owners do have an expectation. So, her owner that said, hey, we booked this last year and we're not booked yet. One of the tools in PriceLabs that you can use that I like is a minimum rate that expires. So you might say, hey, I'm going to hold on to this. I'm going to go for this because the owner expects it. But, at a certain time, if I'm 60 days out or 90 days out or whatever, all bets are off. I'm going to go ahead and let that expire. So instead of setting a fixed number in your system and then having to remember, which is difficult when you've got 1,000 properties, set it to expire at a certain time, and then all bets are off. It goes with true dynamics.
And I think Megan and Kevin both said and mentioned like shifting holidays. If you're international outside the US, you have to be even more careful with that. Everybody else gets way more time off and has a lot more holidays. I have a large client in Belgium, and their November this year was worse than November last year because last year they had 2 4-day weekends and this year they had 0. So you have to really stay on top of it. And then Megan was talking about how it's a small sample size and not to overreact. I think that's important. It's because it's a sample size of 1. And so I had a client last week that was worried because they were really unoccupied for the coming month. And they sent me a message, and an hour later, we booked with a month-long booking. So if you have a sample size of 1, there's going to be huge variance. So you have to be sure not to overreact.
Yeah, it's a very good point indeed. We're talking, obviously I'm sitting right now in Europe, right? And it's very hard because if in Europe, maybe there's no holidays coming in a different country and that's a source country for you. And of course, from one year to another, these days change. So not only you have to know the dates in your country, nearby country, that's impossible. And I think as well, so sometimes if you are, maybe a host with fewer properties, one of the ways to do it is probably also look at data like graphs in PriceLabs that about future occupancy, for example. Can I give you a hint to what's happening if you don't know, right? Some things you can know, some things you don't know, but at least look at some changes. Are the peaks about the same as usual? And as I think we talked about this as well, is that obviously weekends are not the same. I think this year started on Monday, 1st of January, and that was the first time we had this order since 1996. So just to give you an idea of how different it is a year from another, it takes a lot of years for the years to come back to exact same order, same day of the week, same number. So it's just a quick fact on that. Something we mentioned early, and Megan, you starting with this when we talked about, is it just too late? You said the first thing to know is your booking windows, right? And as Adine, we can tell you right now sitting in a ski market, but it's not always been the case. I think other markets pretty well, like beach markets. So same thing. How important are booking windows? How do I get to know about them? And I'm guessing, when we're talking, for example, like get ready for 2024, but if I'm in the ski market, it's not like the high season is right now. So again, how important is that? Again, the booking window, how do I get to know this? And how do I use the booking window to plan my revenue management strategy?
Yeah, of course. So It's so interesting. My experience with booking windows has shifted so much since moving from a beach destination to a ski market, like you said. And in Jackson, we've had this really unfortunate until yesterday experience where we had zero snow, like which is very unusual for this time of year. Clearly, it's so cold outside. But last year, we had more snow than we had had in like 50 years. It was my first winter in Jackson, right? And so, like, it was a dramatic shift from year over year. And we're in a position where it's difficult to get to us. So about 80% of our feeder markets are flying in. So very different than a beach market. When I was in the Panhandle of Florida, over 80% of our customers were driving in. And that was easier for compressed booking windows to make a last minute vacation, where now it's more difficult to do so when you're in a market where most people are flying in and booking plane tickets well in advance. I think that booking windows are compressing. And honestly, they have been over the last 5 years, and we've spoken to this a lot on the panel. It's important, I would say, just as much from a marketing aspect than it is from a revenue management aspect. So I think understanding your booking windows, and I think someone asked this in the chat, like how to find out what your booking window is or how to pull that information. And so if you're not using a tool already, and let's say you're using Track, or back in the day, I was using Escapia to pull manual booking windows, and I would literally pull reports. This was like a very painful process, where I would see a report where it had my date booked and then the date of arrival, and I would literally put in a manual formula to subtract one from the other. Which is embarrassing to say out loud, but this was a long time ago, okay? And for a lot of people that aren't using tools, like that is still an easy-ish way to pull your booking window so you can understand it. And those are going to shift wildly, to Kevin's point earlier, depending on what the size of your unit is. Like if you have a larger property that is going to probably house 3 families, that's going to take people getting together to book well in advance because you have more people organizing the trip and they're spending more money versus a studio or a 1-bedroom that is really easy to book last minute for $200 a night. But where marketing comes into play here is communicate with the marketing team early and often, whether they're in-house or contractors, of when you should start sending emails or being proactive, or when you need to start keeping an eye on your marketing on the OTAs. Like if your strategy is mainly focused on Vrbo and Airbnb bookings, then keep an eye on what your prices are looking like, what your listings look like, how your photos are. I've spoken to that a little bit in the beginning, and leverage what your booking window is to make those marketing decisions. And then on the sales side, prep your team who's answering the phones to understand what to expect. Like, hey, calls are going to start shifting now from in-house guests to guests that are looking to book for future dates. Here are the discounts that we do or we don't want to allow. Here are the homes that we're concerned about because they should be booked by now. It's really like a team effort, but I think that this is an incredible benchmark to start setting all of those conversations up.
Oh, it was on mute. Yes, indeed. I think it is very interesting, and I love what you said as well. It's also about conversations, right? It's really crucial information, the booking window. I also have the question here, people asking, well, can we find a booking window in PriceLabs? So I'm just curious to know how you guys, what do you use to find your booking window? Again, just quickly, you, Meaghan, and then we go to Jordan. What do you use to look at your booking window?
Yeah, so for the most part, we utilize key data to find our booking windows, and it's a combination of key data, and we use Track as our property management system. And so if we want to dive deeper into a specific reservation for a more expensive property, for example, we'll go into Track and pull specific reports.
Sounds good. Thank you. Jordan, same question around this, around the booking window, and how to know what my booking window is, how to use it, how important is it?
Yeah, so we use it a lot, either booking window or pacing. It's pretty much the same data, just reconfigured so you don't get confused. But we use it kind of like year over year to comparable markets, just to see if we're kind of ahead or behind, and how we should adjust. And we do that individually, by property or kind of by season or day of week. So we get really specific, right? We don't expect a Monday to book like a Saturday. So if it goes unbooked, I'm not going to panic early on. We also use it to time launches with some of our larger clients that do acquisitions. So you don't really want to launch in a time that has a super short window or that has really low occupancy. Like I feel like this January in most markets I'm in would be a horrible time to launch, right? You want to focus on occupancy and launch at peak season to get reviews and kind of visibility. So like keeping track of those booking windows matter a lot. And then finally, I think second tier cities are kind of having, and destinations are kind of having their booking windows shift. So I think, last year when rates were super high and everybody could go to the best, and everybody, there's tons of demand at the best beaches and the best ski markets. Second tier cities didn't do quite as good. This year, when those big places kept their rates high, a lot of people decided to go elsewhere. So the booking windows really shift in a lot of like second tier destinations or middle-sized cities. So you have to stay on top of kind of the changes. And then also make sure you're just comparing it to something that actually means something.
Thank you. Kevin, how about you?
Kind of for booking windows, there's lots of places to get it. Yes, in PriceLabs you can see it. I think our PMS does it. Key data obviously is if you've got key data, that's where you want to look. But I also I download every booking that we have into a spreadsheet, and then I have built out something that's called the look through the booking window, and I can change. I can do a drop down between 7, 14, 21, or whatever day I want, and to say like as of today, the next 7 days, where do people most historically book, and then you put that, and then my the year week by week will kind of show like, oh, here's the percentage of people and where they're booking, and you can just play around with that, and you'll start to see as you add the days, the change of that pickup. But yeah, that I agree with Jordan. Pacing is extremely important to look at. At the same time, don't freak out on pacing because, for instance, we have, in high end markets, we had 2 bookings that didn't book at the same time this year as they did last year. It's for Sundance. They always book it and they have for years, but it's like 2 houses totaling about a $60,000 booking revenue amount. And they didn't do it. And they went 3 weeks later. So our pacing was just terrible for November, but then boom, all of a sudden it hit in December. So always dig deeper. Don't just look at reports and react would be my advice. Look at reports or look at your pacing and try to figure out, well, why, and then react, but don't just knee jerk react.
I think booking windows can help you focus your work too. So if you're looking, 8 months out, and you don't really get a lot of bookings at that time, you probably don't want to focus your work there. You probably want to start focusing on it when people are actually booking, and that's when you focus and stay on top of it. And then on top of that, at RevPARTY, we usually do like a pricing sensitivity analysis too. So when in the booking window, does my actions actually have an effect? That helps me focus my work more. And then we also kind of do it by season or month. So for instance, we have one market where it's pretty normal, but December just has like no price sensitivity. It doesn't matter what you do. It's only people that are going home, they're going to go or not. So when you're pacing behind, don't drop rate. It's not going to change your outcome. So we do a lot of stuff like that so we can just focus on what really matters and has an impact.
I had a quick PriceLabs tip. So you can set custom groups in PriceLabs for booking windows. So for example, if you want to say like beach market, if you have like urban and beach, you can do beach between 30 and 60 days out. And then you can set occupancy-based adjustments based on those groups for specific booking windows. And I think it's a great way to tailor your strategy and really segment your inventory, but it's something that you can kind of set up and keep an eye on. And it is really helpful so you don't hold on rate. Because I think a lot of what we saw last year, and Jordan, you spoke to this a little bit, is people held their ADR so high. Then you got last minute and you hit the panic button and everyone decreased prices by 50%. And by then it's too late. And these occupancy-based adjustments will work incrementally based on your booking window data to go in, and you can set them yourself. And so it's not like a set it and forget it type of thing or a computer that's completely deciding what these adjustments are going to be for you. It's kind of a mixture of the both, right? Like you get to tell the computer what you want it to do, and it's based on the data that you've analyzed yourself Or if you don't want to do that, you can fully leave it up to a pricing tool. But I think this allows you to kind of keep your hand on the lever, which is what so many of us on the revenue management side like to do. And I think it's necessary. And it will prevent you again from dropping rate and hitting the panic button too late. And you'll start to see that your ADR will actually climb because you'll book sooner rather than later at maybe a little bit of a discounted rate versus 50%.
I'd like to pause a moment here, and sorry, Kevin. I go to you after that. And we just did a poll, and I'm trying to do polls as we speak to gauge how things are going. And first, so we had about 50% of people replying to the poll saying that they do not know the booking window in their key markets. Question for each of you. Are you surprised by this? Number one. Again, we have mostly property managers. Maybe we have a few smaller hosts as well. But are you surprised by this? And again, how do I get it? And I would just like to pause it. For example, obviously, right, if you're in Price Labs for a listing, you go to neighborhood data. You have data on the booking window. For your whole portfolio, you go to portfolio analytics. You also have data about your booking window for your portfolio. And if you want a whole market view when even you don't have any listings, that's in the market dashboards where you can get these kind of windows. That's just this data, sorry, just looking at price labs quickly. But again, are you surprised by the fact that a lot of people do not know the booking window of their market? And so when you hear this, how do you react as professionals? Again, there's nothing right or wrong. And by the way, I'm very happy people say that they don't know something because it enables us to make sure we really are clear on what we're talking about. Who wants to get started on this one? How surprised are you?
I'll say that I'm actually not that surprised, but I also don't think I think people know more than they know. You know when people start to book. The kind of the drawback of waiting and seeing like, oh gee, all of a sudden I'm getting all these bookings. If you're look at your pickup reports and you'll sort of figure out your booking windows, right? Just every day, what booked in the last 24 hours. And as you see things change, you kind of instinctively know. The problem is you sacrifice those first few listings if you were wrong, meaning you'll have to make some changes if you're booking too fast for a certain period of time, like, oh, we're in the window and we're just booking like crazy. You might have to make some adjustments. Those first ones that booked might have been too low. So that's what I would say. I think that people know booking windows a little bit more than they think they do.
Jordan, Meaghan, a comment on this one?
Yeah, I'm not surprised. I think that when you are in the stage, so 40% of people on the call have between 1 and 9 properties. When you have between 1 and 9 properties, you are wearing every single hat. And you are sometimes cleaning the properties yourself. You are communicating with owners. You're trying to figure out how you can break even if you aren't already doing so. And I think that it is really difficult to set aside time for anything other than just like survival mode. I sit on the Jackson Hole Lodging Association board, and many of my peers in the community have a smaller number of properties compared to Outpost. And every time I see them, they're like, oh my gosh, I'm sorry I missed this meeting. Like I literally cannot lift my head up out of my work. And so I think that has a lot to do with why we got the answer that we did. I think as you start to gain more properties and build a team, it's easier to have somebody that is specifically, that is their role, right? Or to even outsource it to someone like Jordan who can focus on that solely. My suggestion there would be to start dedicating 2 hours a week to it. Like start small. It's worth it and it will get you to a point of profitability faster. And it will also help you to communicate with your owners and build a value proposition for bringing on new owners if growth is your goal. So just kind of keep that in mind. If it's difficult to like lift your head out of it and you're too busy in the operational side, it will ultimately benefit you in the long run for so many reasons.
I'm way more surprised than the two of you. I'm kind of surprised by it. I feel like people who kind of inherently talk about booking windows, even if they don't know about booking windows. We have owners and small clients all the time that are like, well, I think I already booked at this time last year, or I feel like bookings are behind. And that's talking about a booking window, even if you didn't do math or draw a graph. And then lots of people drop their rates as you get closer to stay day. It's just a natural risk management thing. There's less opportunity. That's kind of a booking window playing into how you're pricing just off your gut. So I think people use it a lot more than they probably think, even if they're not tracking it. I know in Price Labs, right, they have the really good comparison on the dashboard between market pacing and your pacing. Usually try to keep it pretty close, pretty far out, but up close I have to remind a bunch of owners on Price Labs that there's going to be a big discrepancy, and that's because their markets don't necessarily book weekdays. So our weekends are kind of pacing on pace with market, but as you get kind of like a month out, we start selling out all of our weekdays. So our occupancy is way higher than the market, and that shows up kind of condensed into one pacing report. So also just make sure you're looking at day of week when you're looking at pacing.
I'm pausing again here because we got good questions. So here in the comments, I can see people wondering why the panelists want to be in the booking window above, at, below market rates. So what's your view on that? People say, "Oh, my staff want to be way above in the window." So what's your reaction to this comment? Just one of you wants to take it.
Be priced right inside the booking window. I think that the longer you hold to rates that might be too high, the lower you're going to end up with those rates. So if you hold on too long, so if a booking window, and I'll use like old terms, if a booking window is basically 60 days, you might get, that unicorn booking 11 months out. And if you think, oh, I'm going to that's what I can get now, and I'm going to hold on to that, you're going to lose a lot. But so you look at the majority, like 60 to 90 days or whatever, start to come off of your highs and kind of cross through that ideal rate round about the time that booking window starts. If you wait too long, instead of a 10% discount, you're going to end up at 35% discount. So that's the key, is to just try to time it so that you're priced right when people are looking. Dynamic pricing and revenue management is all about being priced right for that day, not 3 weeks from now, or not 2 months ago. It's today. What should I be priced at? And again, that neighborhood, if I could, I would not have a base price in Price Labs. I would have a percentile. I would say I want to be in the 80th percentile in this season, if I could. And then just let it go dynamically. Then you're key, but there are some mathematical issues with that, some looping issues with that. But that's what you should be looking at, is where am I percentile wise in that neighborhood tab? Where am I? Where will I fall? And make some adjustments there.
Thank you. And let's go back a bit to the core topic we have, which is as well, revenue management for, medium to large property managers. And obviously, in a big company, there are a lot of people doing a lot of things. We talked earlier, I think, Meaghan, you talked earlier about people, when we have 1 to 9, you wear all hats. Suddenly in a larger company, you have a lot of people wearing hats. and sometimes it's very important to work on your revenue management strategy and tactics with other departments within the company, right? And I think, Meaghan, that's a topic you really, really know really well. So can you share why it's important? As I'm setting my 2024 strategy, I want to talk to my colleagues. Why?
Yeah, of course. If you guys know Jason Sprinkle, he's the CEO of Key Data. He used to ingrain this to me at 360 when I was managing revenue. Imagine sitting with him and that's who you were answering to on the revenue management side. But he would sit down and he would say okay, think about revenue management and marketing. We're at a grocery store, right? It doesn't matter what you're pricing your bananas at if nobody's coming in and buying your bananas. And that is the way, I've seen it now 9 years later, and that's exactly how I communicate it to the team, right? if you are not focusing on marketing and bringing people into your grocery store, then it doesn't really matter what your revenue management team is doing, or your revenue management person, or your contractor if you're using a third party. And so I think understanding that the two really go hand in hand, and then bringing in the reservation side of things too. There are so many times where I want to understand, like, what's the pulse on the phones right now? Are customers calling in or inquirers for a discount? Or are they looking at much future dates? Like, we're not getting inquiry, like the meat of the inquiry data on the revenue management side, right? Like, we're seeing conversions and we're understanding, like, okay, did I make this rate? I made this rate adjustment last week. How much of an impact has it had? And adding in these other departments just build more context to your strategy. You can understand what's working. You can understand if you've had a bump in inquiries this year versus last year, or since you implemented this specific strategy. I used to sit in an office with our director of digital marketing, and we would consistently talk about, like, okay, right now we're extremely focused on spring break. What are you doing on the marketing side to ensure that we're bringing people in for spring break and that we look really, really great on social media? And how are you driving our marketing strategies to ensure that everything I'm doing on the revenue management side is going to be impactful because people are seeing? And you can also start to understand, like, okay, if you have 1,000 inquiries on this property and one reservation, then you probably have a rate issue. But if you have 0 inquiries on this one property, or the one that you did get, you converted, then you probably have a marketing issue and you need to reevaluate what you're doing on the marketing side. And then another thing that we've done, so we focus strongly on the 80-20 rule. The 80% of our revenue comes from the top 20% of our properties. And those are the homes that you want to coddle and protect as much as possible and have your team very, very focused on. Like, have a special Google sheet designated to those. And those are the properties where if you lose one, it is equivalent to losing 6 of your lower projected properties. And not to say that every property isn't as important, but these are the homes, especially if you want to go more toward the luxury side, or if you're really focused on your bottom line, that you should be focused on ensuring you are driving those. And a lot of times, those are the owners that are calling you every single week to talk to you about your strategy. One tidbit that I would say is on the social side, we would see a lot like, hey, could we post this property on social media? We need a booking. And I think owners start to think this very frequently, especially if you have a social media presence where you're posting like lifestyle photos of your properties pretty frequently. And what we've seen is, it typically, if you're going to post a property on social, you're not going to see any movement for a shorter booking window, right? Like, you're going to see someone that wants to book it for 6 months in advance. And so just a little tip from someone who's been through it.
Thank you. Kevin, how about you? We talked about, speaking of being through it, or having different experiences, when it comes to working across the company and, for example, with the marketing departments, I think you've had quite some different, well, you have good perspective on this because you have good experience with it. Can you share again how important it is and how you do it?
Sure, sure. I've worked at companies that are separate in terms of there's a marketing department. They kind of drove the bus on their marketing and revenue management separate. Worked in another one where we were very connected. Where I'm at now, Western Trust, it falls under me. So we basically, or at least our revenue management team drives the marketing. So we're the ones that are saying, hey, it's time to do this, or we want to do that. One of the things that I think I had mentioned at some point in our conversation, I am a firm believer in using promotions versus sweeping changes. So if you have a revenue, or if you have a property that you just can't figure out why it's not booking, and a lot of times you look at things and be like, I think it's priced right. Use promotions. Find out if it's a ranking issue and not a pricing issue. Because if you're not being seen, it doesn't matter really what you do with your rates. Be seen. And I used to always tell people, that new owners, I would say, like, hey, if you want to like bump your ranking on the OTA, the best way to do it is book it. Like, get your credit card out, book your home through an OTA, you know, the first week or so that you're live, do an organic search. Don't just go to your house. Organic search, find it, click on it, look at the pictures, book it. You are going to jump in a solid way. But because promotions nowadays or marketing, a lot of times marketing, it's like, yeah, those emails direct to prior guests and things like that. That's great. Facebook or whatever they're using now. Fine. But OTAs, unfortunately, we have to figure out how to play the game and things that you do. I tell people all the time, you know, it's peak season, we all make money. That's great. What you do in the off peak or the shoulder season, that's going to determine how well your season is. If you are overpriced, or if you're like, we're off peak, I'm not really paying attention anymore. It was a tough season, I'm taking a month. Don't do that, because when the booking window starts to roll around, you're on page 3. You know what I mean? You want to stay on page 1, even in the low. So anyway, that's my advice. Use promotions, in other words.
So promotions like a temporary discount or like a lower price for a while,
you know,
and see
the
how it
next 3
reacts.
bookings.
Yeah.
Yeah. And the good thing about promotions is you can really identify, is it a pricing issue? Is it not? But you can also control it a little bit better. So instead of just saying, oh, I'm going to drop my base rate, just say, I'm going to look for, here's where our gaps are. I'm going to go ahead right now and say, oh, you know, I'm in a lot of ski season. So I might say, you know, the next 3 bookings from April, mud season, you know, gets a 20% discount. That's going to give me a boost in a period of time that I'm not really that concerned about giving away.
So we stopped a lot on booking window because it was really important. So it means we only have 7 minutes left. So I will immediately go to the last question I had in mind, which was 2024. Maybe the trends are not the same as in the past. Certainly not like 2021, 2022. Jordan, on this, how do I prepare for these discussions with the owners again for 2024? What do I need to tell them? How to be ready?
Yeah, I think we really have to be proactive in communicating to them as things change. So a lot of our markets are seeing really big drops off in RevPAR and occupancy kind of year over year. So you have to make sure they know that. I think contextualizing it helps a lot. They don't always do all the same comparisons that the 3 of us on this panel probably do all the time. So you need to show them how their market's behaving, how their competition's behaving. I think there's going to be a lot of like macro stress applied in the US. The pent-up demand is kind of gone. There's no more stimmy checks. It's hard to borrow money. Discretionary spending is down. Travel confidence is down. So it's just going to go back to more of a kind of normal pattern. I'm already starting to see rates suppress in several markets. And I think if you get behind the curve on that, you'll probably lose out for summer for sure. So I think you just have to kind of not only look at the past what happened, but also kind of see where it's going. You know, maybe draw an imaginary line on your chart of what you think is going to happen, and then play to that and try to beat everybody to the punch.
Thanks, Meaghan. What's your view on this for the owner discussions, conversations?
So well, when it comes to like 2024 in general, I think we're going to see more compressed booking windows. And I think we're going to see a year that's very similar to 2023 with hopefully a little bit better results, because we're going to be making incremental changes to our pricing rather than dropping significantly last minute. On the owner side, proactive communication, like over communication, is the number one thing that you can do. I think that owners are going to know if they are making less revenue almost immediately when they check their owner statements. And you can start to understand like which owner is very focused on heads and beds versus the owner that's really focused on, hey, I'm fine with the lower occupancy. I just really want to hold on my rate. So those owners that are focused on heads and beds are going to be the first one picking up the phone to call you when they notice a decline in reservations year over year. We send out a newsletter to our owners at the first of every month where we discuss the previous month's data, and then we also talk about what we're doing moving forward, and we share like the good, the bad, and the ugly. And I think it's helpful to give them that context, like over communicate with them, but then also explain to them what you're doing to fix it. So, hey, our February is looking worse this year than it did last year. We haven't had any snow until the middle of January. Here's what we're doing to combat that. We're going to make it up in these months, or we're lowering rates X percentage to increase occupancy and hopefully end up at the same RevPAR that we had last year. And I think if you can give them context as to what you're doing, it's helpful for them to understand, like, you're not just sharing the good news with them all the time, because it's not always going to be good news. So that's my suggestion: over communicate and be transparent.
Over communicate, be transparent. That's one way to go, a good way, sorry, to go with the owners. Kevin, what's your take on this one?
Agree with everything said. I think that you communicate. I think it's important to be honest about it, be transparent, show the data. I love how Meaghan included the not only here it is, but here's our plan. Here's the solution. I would also stress that outside of the whole revenue side of things, revenue management side of things, this is an important thing for operations. It's hard to break up with someone you like, right? So the local operations team must have a relationship with their owners. If the only time you hear from an owner, or they hear from their operations person, is, hey, we have a flood in your house, that's not good. It's the other stuff that you have to do. So all of this other stuff aside, if your price is a little lower, you're making a little less, and you can explain it, that's great, because you have their trust, you have a relationship with them. So that is the 2024 goal, I think, is build relationships. If you don't have them already, if you don't have them, you're going to feel it, I think.
I really like this also, because we talked about how you have to prepare, you can still tweak your 2024 strategy. We talked about key notions, booking window, same time last year. We talked pacing. We talked basically how, so you have to, turn yourself toward other people in your company with your colleagues, and now how you should not keep this to yourself, but obviously share as well with your owners. So it really shows how revenue management is important, right, in a company, and how crucial it is also to communicate around it inside, outside the company. I want to finish now with a few things. I'm not sure we have time for all the questions, because I really I saw a lot of questions about booking windows, so I really stop on post here, but just a few things. There were questions about trainings. Yes, indeed, right? We do trainings every weekday. Every weekday you can register for free training. We have our one-on-one training. We also have a two-on-one training for if you're a bit more advanced, several times a week. So pick that. And these are live trainings where we, obviously we have like already a set training, but you can ask your own question live, and there we are right into the interface of PriceLabs. So this is really, we can grow deeper, right? Things you've noted today, this is where you can go back and say, you know what? I'd like to see this. That's the first thing I would say. A second thing is that, and thank you, Ishani, who's organizing this with me. I forgot to thank her, but Ishani, my team as well, is we're making sure that after this, you're going to get the recording of this conference, and we're also collecting the questions, and we'll put together basically questions to the most frequent questions we've had. So even if we didn't have the time to cover all the questions, it's noted, right? Also, I saw some product improvement suggestions. That's noted as well, because that's also why we're doing this, right? It's also to hear how you feel about this, are things clear or not. So thank you so much for that. Yes, so you can expect, again, a video replay soon and a takeaway article. So that's great. We are on time. Yes, obviously the training sessions are free, by the way, of course, the one-on-one, 201. If you also are a larger property manager, you also probably know your account managers. So don't hesitate to contact this person, because, as you know, we are there for you. And most of them, or I think all of them, were revenue managers in a different life. So pretty good conversation to have with them. We're on time. I want to make sure because I know you are all busy, especially also our speakers. So Meaghan, Kevin, I would like to thank Jordan as well, of course, I would like to thank you. If people want to reach out to you, and Meaghan, for example, people say, oh, I want to have a one-on-one with Meaghan. She's fantastic. She knows so much about marketing. Anyway, if people want to get a hold of you and contact you, what's the best way, each of you, to contact you? Maybe Meaghan, Kevin, Jordan in this order. How to contact you?
I think it's probably easiest to contact me on LinkedIn. So I'll drop my LinkedIn URL in the chat. Thank you guys so much for having me. Thank you, Thibaut.
Thanks, Meaghan. Kevin.
Yeah, thanks for having me. LinkedIn is probably great for me as well. Yes.
Thank you, Kevin.
Thank you, Thibaut. My website's probably the easiest to get a hold of me. It also has all my other contact information there. So if you go to www.revpartyconsulting.com, you can find all of my info.
That's such a great name, RevPARTY. I always like it. Thank you so much, Jordan. Thank you all. And there's still more than 130 people connected right now. Thank you all for attending. And if you're watching a replay, thank you for making it to the end of the replay. You get special brownie points. Thank you all. See you next month for our next conference. Take care, everyone.
Thank you. Bye-bye.